Well, Australia's international education sector is pleading with Beijing to lift its travel ban after China warned its citizens not to travel to Australia because of so-called racist attacks. The Global Times, which is known as the mouthpiece for the Chinese regime, claims that Australia's push for spearheading a global inquiry into COVID-19 and actions on foreign investment have contributed to the travel advice. Joining me now, South Australian Liberal Senator Alex Antic. Senator Antic, great to have you on the show again tonight. The Chinese are getting fairly aggressive in their rhetoric towards Australia. You know, they've obviously imposed those trade sanctions. Now they're advising their tourists not to come here. And of course, they're also being quite punitive when it comes to our tertiary education sector.
Well, thanks for having me on again, Gleeso. Look, that certainly seems to be the case. As you've just said, it appears that the message out of Beijing is loud and clear, and that is that we're going to rattle the cage. I think later today, in fact, the Ministry of Education in Beijing, the education arm piece of the Chinese Communist Party, made even more bold statements about the danger associated with students coming to Australia for apparent reasons of racism, violence, and even COVID-19, ironically. So it seems to be a bit of a trend. As you said, we've seen this kind of intimidatory tactics being used, threatening wine, barley, our abattoirs, and all sorts of other industries. So this seems to be the natural extension of this into what is also a very important area for us, which is the international student market. So it seems to be increasing. It seems to be on the move.
Alex, I had Peter Jennings on the show last night. He's obviously very, very au fait with what goes on in China, and he said, you know, this is classic, propaganda from the Chinese. He said it's about as hairy-chested as he's seen in a long time. But he also mentioned that it wasn't just Australia. He said they're picking fights around the globe.
Yeah, look, that's right. We've heard the term wolf warrior diplomacy, and I think this is just another example of it, really. Look, it's true. This seems to be a fight that's being picked with the West, in essence. And I note that there's also been reports today from KPMG and the University of Sydney that Chinese investment into Australia has dropped 60%, or did drop 60% between 2018 to 2019. Now, that ties in fairly closely with the Australian government's decision in relation to Huawei. But it's interesting to note that that is an experience which is, as you say, being shared by a number of our Western allies, the Five Eyes nations, the US, the United Kingdom and so forth. And it seems that China has taken the view that it's going to put that capital into countries which have signed up to the Belt and Road Initiative, countries like Mexico, Chile, Peru, Eastern European countries. So I think it was Warren Buffett who said that you can only tell who's swimming naked when the tide goes out. Well, it seems to be that China have now shown their hand in terms of their foreign investment strategy. I mean, this is as much to do with strategic leverage and who we can use in order to sort of influence as much as it is to actually making a dollar. From Australia's point of view, it's always got to be about Australia first. It's always got to be about what's in our national interests. And I was very gladdened to see that Josh Frydenberg, the Treasurer, has taken steps last week, as the Prime Minister has as well, to strengthen those foreign investment rules, and we'll be seeing that legislation come into the Parliament in the latter part of the year. So that's great news.
Alex, against that backdrop, you must be disappointed at what's going on in Victoria with the Belt and Road Initiative there, and you know, Dan Andrews is making it very clear that he's putting Victoria first and Australia second.
Yeah, look, I think that is an absolute head-scratcher, that one. I think more will become clear through the fullness of time. But look, it certainly does, as I said, it shows up what the game is here. And the game here is all about using capital as strategic leverage for the Chinese Communist Party all over the globe. We've seen strategic interests in various parts of the world, the South Pacific being gobbled up, this kind of predatory lending type tactics that we're talking about. This is something that Australia definitely does not want to get into. It's very disappointing. I think that message has been made loud and clear to the Victorian government. Who knows whether it'll be heard.
Just quickly before we go, the diversification policy outlook, very much geared towards India and, of course, Indonesia. You must be buoyed by the talks between I think the Prime Minister's heading off he was due to go and see Modi in India before COVID, but I think he's heading off there when that's practicable.
That's right. Look, it is. And I think this comes back to what we originally talked about. Once again, COVID-19 has exposed some of these issues, some of these weaknesses, but it's also given us an opportunity to explore some of those different paths, different avenues and supply lines, trading partners. I mean, look, China are always going to be on the trading in the field. I think in the same time as their investment has gone down in that period, the actual two-way trading figures went up 20%. But it is critical that we find ways to diversify with different trading partners. I mean, the experience with Chinese students just shows how reliant we are in yet another industry to China and to the whims of the Chinese Communist Party. So spreading that load far and wide is a very, very good thing, and I absolutely welcome it.
Senator Alex Antic, thank you for joining us tonight on Sky News Across Australia. Great to see you.
Great to see you. Thanks, Gliso.